Centering Ourselves, African American Feminist and Womanist Studies of Discourse, to the Cultural Health Initiative, to performances of Maya Angelou's Phenomenal Woman, which she did the first time I met her. Dr. Davis brings both passion and insight to her work. Dr. Mary Stuckey of Georgia State focuses on presidential communication, national identity, and strategic failures. How's that for a winning combination? From Jimmy Carter to Ronald Reagan to FDR, Dr. Stuckey brings both acumen and a keen sense of humor to her work. I am so delighted that the Capitol Steps members have agreed to stay and undergo this stern interrogation, and that both Dr. Davis and Dr. Stuckey will allow their expertise. Please welcome them to the stage. Thank you so much. Thank you. This is fabulous.
There you go.
What?
Thanks, dear.
Okay.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Hey there.
So somebody asked me if we were going to ask you really hard questions, and my response was, yeah, because I'm going to take a bunch of people who do satire for a living, and I'm going to be a real jerk. Because that seems sensible.
That never happens to us. Never, ever.
No.
Never, ever.
I would imagine that's the
One, two,
case.
test.
So as educators, most of us are only unintentionally comedians. As comedians, what are your thoughts on the ways in which your work may be unintentionally educational? So like, what lessons are citizens likely to learn from watching what you guys do?
I think everyone learned that Rob Ford is very funny. No, but I mean, well, it's a good thing. We have a very open society. Well, pretty much. We think it is anyway. We're totally wrong, but we think it is. But it's nice to know that when you see something ridiculous happening on a large scale and you don't really hear anything about it, it's a great reaction that we get a lot. It's very electric to say, this is just ridiculous, and to hear everyone agree with you, and you wonder why it's going on if everyone agrees. But it's, and to let people know that stuff that goes on is, you got to take a closer look at it.
I've been approached any number of times by people after shows saying, I teach history in 6th grade or 8th grade or 10th grade, and I can't tell you the number of times I played your songs for people. Just, sure, absolutely. I mean, it may not be appropriate for most schools, but at least the issue is there. For somebody who is, I mean, we've been doing the show since '81. The recordings have been around since '84. So, if somebody's in, 4th or 5th or 6th grade, they don't really know what, like, Reagan going to Bitburg was all about. We have a song about that from 1984, which they can, pull out and say, here's what this is all about. So.
Very nice. Very nice. Can we give them another round of applause? For
Yes,
what we
yes,
heard?
let's.
Yes.
Please, thank you.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you. Right, this question has to do with performance.
We know nothing about that. Obviously, nothing.
Well, performance in our field is a contested term in our field of communication studies. For some, it refers to the performance of social roles while exploring one's identity upon the canvas of society. What?
I think we have an easier job. For us, it means remembering words.
It's funny, we were talking about that exact issue backstage earlier tonight.
And you know what?
And I'm glad you asked that question.
Well, the question has not come in yet.
No, she's not finished.
That was so good,
Oh,
what you just said.
well, let the lady finish.
But here it goes. What does performance mean to you? And what is the performative nature of your particular troupe?
I think it goes back to what this is Mike Tilford, everyone. What Tilford was saying about, as performers, we get to question things and bring up the extremes on both parties, and that gets people talking, and it's really great when we find out that it's a room full of people, all different kinds of political leanings, but they all laugh at the same things. Everybody laughs at the same thing, and that I've been doing this for 15 years, and still that continues to amaze me. So I think as performers, that's where we really connect, because we get it, and we can't wait to throw it out at you. But when we feel that energy back, you get it, you laugh. That's our role.
That's
My
our role.
mother doesn't laugh at Lurdy Dies. She doesn't get it. But other than that, she's right.
We don't always get the jokes getting them either. You get something by email or it's like, what on earth does this mean? And then sometimes you deliver it and what you thought was going to be the funny part turns out to be the not funny part, and something you thought wasn't going to be the funny part was hysterical to somebody. So it's just, people find all sorts of different things funny in different sorts of ways, and we probe, we test, we tinker with things as we go along. It's a process more than a final product.
Yes, very nice. Other comments at all?
Well, just from the performer side of performance, we do ridiculous things. We have ridiculous wigs and costumes, and we hold microphones, which is never natural. People don't go around talking to each other holding microphones. So there's a lot of unnaturality. But somehow in the midst of all that performance-wise, we have to try and sincerely put forth whatever the emotion is that we are wearing at that moment for that joke or that character. So it ends up being about, even in its bulliest form, which we do sometimes, it ends up being about this weird kind of sincerity, because that's how you elicit common reactions from people.
No, I think that's fine.
Morgan Duncan, ladies and gentlemen. There he is, right there. Not just a pretty face.
Okay, so then Morgan, this one's for you.
Lay it on me.
There's a long history of political humor in the U.S., and most of it is aimed at particularly partisan ends, and you guys are specifically nonpartisan.
Right.
Do you ever worry about the way that your stuff might be read in a partisan way, or having people use it for particular kinds of ends that you don't intend?
I don't think I've not run across anyone who's attempted to do that. I do find that we do invariably offend someone during the performance. Someone who, thought the other stuff was just funny, but oh no, and then now he's picking on us. So that does happen, but I don't know if anyone's taken it out of context to use sort of to hold up and say, no, they were telling the truth here when they said whatever.
You say that you're nonpartisan. Is that ever hard? Like, is one party sometimes
It's
stupider
more,
than the other?
once upon a time we said the Capitol steps are bipartisan, bicameral, and bi-American. So if you don't like one particular song that we're doing, stick around for a couple of minutes. I'm sure we'll do something that you'll like just fine. So
Occasionally we give the impression of not being bipartisan over the years several times, but the fact of the matter is we make fun of what's going on. And unfortunately, the parties are not cooperative. The sides are not cooperative. Invariably, they screw up at different rates. And so there'll be periods for which we're just pouncing on one side because that's what's happening. And, the Clinton years are very tough for if you were a Democrat coming to see the show, because every day a new song. But likewise, the George Bush years were also similar in that respect.
Very hard,
So it's more that we follow the wave of the populist screw-ups that are going on. We surf the tide of incompetence.
surf? I'm going to write that down.
Yeah,
that's
surf.
good. Wow.
And of course,
That was good.
whoever's in power is going to get the most scrutiny at the time, so they're going to be in the headlines, they're going to be on the covers of the magazines, so.
I think it's going to be our next album title, Surfing the Tide of Incompetence.
I love that.
That's great.
I'm thinking Beach Boys riff.
Beach Boy, absolutely, yeah.
Next question is about the government shutdown. How did the government shutdown affect your work as members of the Capitol Steps?
Well, we're not
busy.
what you call necessary members of the government, so. It actually pumped up our business. People called us and started asking questions. People booked us on a couple of things. Oddly enough, anytime something bad happens, it's always good for us.
Yeah, unfortunately. The worse it is for you, the better it is for us.
The worse the news there is, absolutely. Come to the Capitol Steps and see what it rhymes with. I mean, that's...
And what was it, September 30th, we all got emails to make sure you check your email early in the morning, because we had a show October 1st, the morning after all that.
Right, we all did.
And so there were 2 sets of lyrics. Just like in election years, it's
Yeah.
2 sets, and we're just
Yeah.
like, oh gosh,
Still
what are
in
we gonna,
business, not in business.
Yeah, because we always
Plan
have
A,
shows the
plan
next
B.
day,
Plan A,
so, and it's on us to learn it.
And then this is a follow-up question. Did you then have to also learn all the lyrics of both sets? so that you were prepared?
Well, you're assuming we learn things ahead of time. I mean, there's a reason I have all this in my
Ryan,
pocket.
don't tell her that.
Yeah, there are two approaches, though. One is to learn everything, and one is to learn nothing. I go with everything myself.
I
so.
kind of breeze over all of it so that I know, but I don't commit until I really, really know.
Well, people have different ways of learning things,
Yeah,
too. I mean, it's
absolutely.
different rates of learning, different ways of learning. So it's
And you know what? It still doesn't help.
Changes.
I'll tell you
sometimes
why.
within an hour.
You remember the Bush-Gore election? We had a whole show of Bush won. We had a whole show of Gore won. We were in Seattle. It was midnight. We just done a show. The election's going on. We had no show if no one won.
And to finish that story, we actually did a show 10 a.m. the morning after the
Yeah.
election.
I was on it.
I was on that one too, and sure, I called up our then director, and it's like, okay, so now what do we do? I mean, 6 in the morning. You call him, it's like, now what do we do? Okay, go to the show and call me, and I'll dictate something to you. What? Okay, I mean, what can you do? I mean, you have to do a show. You have to do a show that reflects what's going on, and it was one of the best shows we did because everybody was right there
Oh my
in the moment
gosh,
with us
yeah.
because we were all suffering or enjoying at the same time.
Yeah.
So.
Plus, 8 seconds after the fact, your all standards are much lower.
Well, they'd all probably been up all night watching the returns too. so-
Probably.
So many of the folks in the audience here study the development and the functioning of civic democracy, which depends on informed citizens taking part in political debates and rational discussion. Yeah. You see where I'm going with it,
Their
right?
theory, at least, right?
It is the theory.
Okay.
And some of these people
absolutely believe
have criticized, for example, Jon Stewart for increasing cynicism among the electorate and making it harder for people, so a pox on both your houses. If these people are all fools, why do I bother? So how would you address that criticism if it was directed at you? Or assume for the moment I'm directing it at you and then respond.
Well, we're not mean, We really are very hopeful when you look at us because we talk about the extremes on both sides and how both sides can get to be, a little silly. And the real business happens when people see each other, hear each other, laugh together, and start to talk about solutions. So that's what we're trying to.
And I don't think political
perpetuate.
humor necessarily would increase the cynicism of somebody that's watching our show. I mean, I think that, A, it's a release for people that already are feeling cynical about things.
Right.
And so if the people out there, I don't mean the general public, I mean like, if you people would stop being so damn cynical. If our show always reflects the popular emotion show as, hopefully the cynical feeling of these people can't do a darn thing right on either side would actually wane from time to time, then we'd be able to do some different jokes.
Yeah.
And the criticism would not nearly be as strong as it would be. So. I don't think we're at fault for the cynicism of America. I think we are.
Nor Jon Stewart.
Nor Jon Stewart,
no.
nor Stephen
Yeah.
Colbert, nor anybody else. I
I
mean,
think we actually keep the cynicism down a little bit.
Sure,
It's a funnel
it's-
for it. And plus, like I said before, if you think the government's out to get me, then you're a paranoid, person. But if you get into a huge group of people and you realize, that's not the case. The government is out to get all of us. Then there's more camaraderie.
I see from your website that you take a lot of elements pertinent to popular culture, such as the rolling kidney stones and politics, like Obamacare. But you don't seem to find Benghazi very funny. Is there any issue or a set of issues you consider that are out of bounds that absolutely you will not discuss? And then, if so, how do you make that call?
There are always going to be issues that are not in and of themselves humorous, but on the edges of all of that, there's always going to be some politician dealing with that who is going to screw up or say something ridiculous. It would be
For instance, we did do a song about Benghazi. The
absolutely
La La
did.
La song was
Absolutely about
Benghazi.
Benghazi.
But instead of making fun of something imminently not making funnable, that's not right. You know what I mean? But
not an
like
album
Benghazi, we made fun of the people dealing with it, which is invariably, again, surfing that tide. There's usually some crack in the wall you can find in some situation.
there was, during the Katrina crisis, it was not making fun of the floods or the people being homeless, it was making fun of
FEMA.
Brown and FEMA and their reaction to it. During the OJ trial, it was not making fun of the murders, it was making fun of
Ito
Lance Ito and Rosa Lopez and all of the various ancillary people around it. So you're not making fun of the actual subject itself, you're poking fun at the edges of the things.
Yeah, because some things are unavoidable. OJ, unavoidable. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, we did.
But on the other hand, how do you laugh about that?
Right.
We had 10 songs about the O.J. Simpson trial at one point in our show.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, none of this stuff is funny. You know, to some degree or another, they're all really serious issues that we're dealing with, but we're trying to find the ridiculous edge of it.
Do you come to a consensus, or do you find?
Well, it's only been 30 years. We'll do it someday.
Someday, yeah.
Someday we'll get everybody to agree on something.
Yeah, no, we never do.
If you were to poll individual members of the Capitol Steps privately, I think you would find the complete circle. You would find some like John Birchers, you would find some communists, and some that sort of meet right in the middle.
Yeah, we're all over
We
the
are a
place.
very
We're
broad
really
based
interesting, and we bring people together. That's what we do.
We have people who work for Gary Hart and Jesse Helms.
That's right.
All over.
Yeah,
One of our technicians is an anarchist.
he's
so
the
I mean,
cutest
there you
little
go.
anarchist
He
you've
is the
ever
cutest
seen.
anarchist.
Isn't he?
Suddenly I'm very nervous.
Yeah.
I was only worried the sound would be all over because he's an anarchist. He's really good.
No, he's actually.
This is way harder than
You
it looks,
volunteered to be
people.
up here.
It's not our fault.
So the people out here are totally smart about national politics, all of them, to a person.
Okay.
But this is probably not always the case for you. And a lot of you are former staffers on the Hill, right? So do you have an issue or problems with wanting to play insider baseball for the kind of people who really get the inner workings of the Hill, and then the problems of translating that to a general audience?
I think the key for us as performers is always making sure that we have an instant sort of gratification situation where if people aren't laughing, then it's not broad enough.
Yeah.
So I think
There's the old show business adage, will it play in Peoria?
Yeah. And then, when the group first started, I wasn't around then, Brian was closer, but I mean, we did shows mostly on Cap. We started as a Senate office Christmas party, and then after that, it was like, oh, come to do this party, come to our meeting, and it just sort of grew out of that. But that was all for people who basically worked on Capitol Hill. So, I mean, in the old days, we had entire songs about budget amendments,
closure
specifically.
and stuff like
Hilarious,
How about that
Seven
bumper amendment to
section
HR
C,
2424? Wasn't that hysterical? It's easier to say,
It's
isn't
hard to
Kim
rhyme
Kardashian
HCSC
ridiculous?
75601.
The broader you can paint with, the broader a brush you can paint with, the more issues you can cover, and the more it appeals to a wider audience. So if you can, again, hit both sides equally, cover as many issues as you can, without going into too much depth, sort of scrape the surface, you can cover a lot more. People get much more appreciation out of it.
Plus, we live in a time of social media. It is so easy to go online or on Twitter or anything and find out what everybody's talking about.
Right.
And that's what people want to hear about generally. I mean, it sort of has made things so much easier that everybody has turned into like little fence gossips everywhere. It's just awesome.
Well, it's also, I mean, if I might, it's also made it a lot harder to do what we do. I mean,
Right.
because in our business, when I first started doing this, you would write a song and it would be a good song, and you would have something to do on stage for 6 months, 9 months. And nowadays, something happens. I mean, okay, a story breaks, okay, and 15 minutes later you have the opposition response, and then 15 minutes after that you have the spin and the sound bites and the blah 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 blah. And by the time we get around to doing something about it, everybody's heard everything there is to possibly hear about it, and after a week, people have forgotten about it. I mean,
And moved on to something else.
The government shutdown was a month ago, and it seems like it was last year.
Yeah, forever ago.
Yeah. So.
How many of you have already forgotten about the mayor of Toronto? Come on.
Well, I have to say that I'm really looking forward to you all coming to where I live, and that is Tempe, Arizona. But you're going to be in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Scottsdale
Yep.
Performing Arts
I'll
Center.
be there.
Exactly.
Thanksgiving weekend.
Right.
That's a
Just
gorgeous
about-
place.
If you go to the Capitol Steps website at www.capitolsteps.com, you can purchase tickets to any of our shows throughout the country. You can find information on how to book the Capitol Steps for both private and public events.
Brian Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I do.
He also does all your disclaimers at the end of ads. He's very good.
And this will be our last question for the evening. How does political satire illuminate our roles as American citizens?
To question.
It's a question.
I think it's to constantly question. We all want this to be the best. And there are ways to always improve it. And so you can never take anything quite at face value. Question it, poke fun at it. That makes people talk about it.
And what greater freedom do we have? I mean, it's
There
a
was-
fantastic thing that we
Since
can
Yankee
say all these
Doodle.
things,
I mean,
a few
sort
blocks
of-
from the White House and not
That's
end
sort
up
of
in
it.
Guantanamo Bay.
If nothing else, if nothing else, it's like a bellwether. You know, whatever we say, they might not like it. People might like it or whatever. But as long as we are allowed to say the things we say, which you can't do everywhere, then things are not as bad maybe as we think.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Capitol steps.
Please do join us tomorrow morning at 8 and 9:30 in the Empire Ballroom, which is where the Legislative Assembly met, for a follow-up panel with a bevy of scholars providing additional insights. Also, please join us across the hall for the wonderful reception. I have spent almost 2 years imagining this. He looks so innocent. I spent almost 2 years imagining this, and it has surpassed my wildest expectation. Part of that because of you. Thank you.